D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. Before we get started today, I must have done something that ticked Derek off.
It didn't necessarily tick me off at all. I'm very observant. And, when you've been working with someone for a long time, you sort of pick up on their habits of things they're doing. Not that they're bad, but just little habits that people got. So you pick up on them. And as I pulled in this morning, it hit me like I saw your car sitting there. I'm like, okay, Adam's here, as he usually is. But I said, well, the parking lot seems to be a little free today, and you got the parking space right in the front, the ideal parking space right there in the front. But I wondered, like, well, if he has the parking space right in the front, why didn't he pull in? Why didn't he bag in? I've come to understand now there are two types of people in this world. There are those that pull in and those that back in. Okay, he's a pull-in guy, Adam. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Cool. David and Nick are back-end guys. I'm a back-end guy.
You're a back-end guy.
Yeah, or person. What are you, Willie? I'm going to assume, and I can't be wrong because again, I'm picking up on habits. When you come in, you don't seem to back in. It seems you just go right. You go right in. You head first. Boom. I'm parking.
To be fair, Willie rolls up at 10:59 for our 11 o'clock show, so he may not have time to back in.
But no, at times, yeah. But no, Willie, it doesn't matter.
I'm a
Willie's a pull-in guy.
I will back in if I am going to, such as a Predator game or another kind of game where
to get out quick.
Got to get out quick.
See, I'm a back-end guy. One of the reasons is because I like to get in and out quickly. Another is safety for me because I get to back up all the way against like the wall or something, and I can see everybody coming. So I get in my car and I can see people coming at me as opposed to getting in my car and now everybody's behind me. And I would advise all women, if you are able to back in, I tell my daughter the same thing. If you are able to back in, because it gives yourself the ability to see what's in front of you when you get in your car. Because we all like to get in our car, fiddle with our phones, put our seatbelt, all this stuff that we love to do that we should just get in our car and drive away. But we don't. So women, importantly, young women, if you have your dad, your brother, ask them to teach you, or your mom, ask them to teach you how to back in. Because believe me, it is a headache to start off, but once you figure it out, it's clean selling. But which one are you, people? Which one are you, our listeners? Are you a back-in type of person, or you are a pull-in type of person?
And let's be grown-ups about this.
Yes.
I know you're going to make certain jokes about backing in or pulling in. Let's not do that.
What are you talking about?
Yes, let's keep it clean. Let's just keep it clean.
I tend to pull in.
Okay.
I will occasionally back in.
Mm-hmm.
I like a good pull-through spot where you can drive through the first spot to get to the second spot. But if there's
one of those guys too,
if there's one of those, there's one thing that pisses me off when I'm driving, it's people who insist on backing in busy parking lots or parking garages, and they hold up the line while everybody else is waiting to park.
Yeah, those people.
That is the absolute worst.
See, I don't mind that if you know what you're doing. But if you don't know what you're doing, you got to keep pulling out. No, don't. Learn how to become an expert at it first before you start trying to, back in when there's congestion in the parking lot or the, parking garage. Be an expert at it. But if you're not an expert and the coast is clear, back in, back that big car in, man. And then you sit it, boom, put it in park. Now you can see everything. So are you, listeners, are you a pull-in person? There's nothing wrong with that. Or are you a back-end person? Are you part of the cool bunch that like to back in, Which one are you?
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Gino says, back-in people do it right. Pull-in people are rude because they just back up out of the spot, not able to see cars coming by, making them stop and watch you struggle. Worse if those people that pull in take 3 to 4 attempts to back out of the spot.
Yeah, that's the part that I dislike when I'm getting ready to go. Not only the safety part, but also backing up, having to watch the traffic, look over here and all this other stuff. No, I just want to be able to see everything and pull straight out. So that's the type of guy I am. And I know there are probably more back end people than there are pull in.
I don't think so.
I think so.
there's a lot more pulling.
No, not in this new day and age. No. Back end guy.
Just look at the cars in the parking lot. How many of them are backed in? How many are pulled in?
I would say half, wouldn't you say?
No, everyone I can
Pull
see
in,
is
back
pulled
in, pull in, back in, pull in, and then I think there's a back end. So it's like every other car.
I'm going to say in a general sense, it's 75-25.
It's not that. No.
Okay, we'll take a
55,
Go to your
45.
lot. If you're driving right now, look at the lot and tell me what's the percentage.
We'll take a quick sample.
Mhm.
Chuck is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chuck, pull in or back in? Who are you?
Hey, I'm a back end.
That's right.
Story behind it. Hey, reason being, years ago, my first job, I was backing out of a place I pulled in and hit somebody. That shocked me. So for 40 years, I've been a backing guy because of that.
See, everybody has their reasons,
Thank
and that's
you for
a
the
good
call,
one.
Chuck.
It's hard to, even though we have the cameras and everything. See, I'm old school, man. The camera's there, but I like to look back. I'm not with that looking at the camera all. No, and my kids act, well, there's the camera right there. No, I'm old school. When my mom was driving and my dad was driving, you better move out the middle so they can see when they look back.
I'm going to quickly run through these texts. Jay from Laverne, always back in. It's easier than pulling in, but also you can just pull out when you leave. Most cars nowadays have backup cameras, so use your mirrors and the camera to back in. Gino says, D-Mace, you cool. Keep backing that thing up. Andrew says, no way I'm wasting the extra 30 seconds backing in. With a backup camera, there hasn't been a need to pull in this millennium. Dylan from Antioch says, mostly back in, but a lot of it depends on the angle of approach to the parking spot. Sometimes backing in is actually much easier. Eric in Buffalo says, I try to back into my parking spot as much as possible. Easier to leave your parking spot. Go Bills.
There we go. See, Willie. That doesn't sound. It does sound like 75-25, but the other way.
I do want to finish on Randy.
I think it's a vocal minority. Is what I'm thinking.
I want to finish.
Minority.
I want to finish with Randy. Randy
Most
says
normal people just like I got to get to the spot. I'm pulling in.
I want to finish with Randy. He says back in, especially in a parking lot, so you don't have to back out when people may be behind me. Bet nobody does this. I am a diagnosed perfectionist. Seriously, I also have to be perfectly parallel to the line, even if it's an expansion joint in a driveway. I've made my mom move her car if she pulls in crooked to my driveway.
I'm the same way. I got to pull in perfectly, like in between the lines. When I'm bagging in, I will. But 9 times out of 10, I've done it so much that I know angles of cars, in parking spaces. So when I pull my car in, I know if I'm next to a SUV or a pickup truck or a little small, I know what I need to do and how far ahead I need to go. So
John in
I
Nashville.
perfected it.
John in Nashville says, I'm sitting in the Publix parking garage, and from my truck that is backed in, I see 11 pulled in and 2 backed in.
Exactly.
That's because it's in a parking structure.
What?
I mean, it's in a parking garage.
Every parking lot
People
a parking
scared.
structure?
People scared when they're in the parking garage,
Team
man.
pulling over here. Who's with me?
I think it's pretty clear. 80% of the people.
No,
are with you.
oh my goodness, Willie, how did you go to 80%? Everybody
The
that
guy
has
just said 11-2. That's over 80%.
no, we're talking about the people that have called their car.
Oh, so you're saying his text doesn't mean anything?
He pulled in, right?
By the way, 11 out of 13 is 84.6%.
But he
right.
pulled in, right? He backed in, right?
He backed in.
Okay, he backed in. Every other person that's called in text, they back in.
Right.
But then you get the 10 or so that
The
pulled in.
oddballs. The oddballs were excited about your question.
No,
They
are,
want to be with you.
they are not. We are true. And when I mean true, we are true drivers. The ones that back in, we are true drivers. Okay? Ask a NASCAR person.
I don't think there's anything wrong.
I guarantee you a
backing in.
NASCAR person want to back in instead of pull in.
There's nothing wrong with backing in. There's nothing wrong with it. I just think most people don't.
That's because most people, I'm not going to say that because then people will get mad at me. But I'm saying it tongue in cheek. We all are lazy, man. at some point of another during the day. We all just get lazy, and we feel pulling in is the laziest thing we can do. It don't, so just do it. I do it sometimes, not off. I am a back end person at least 90% of the time. When the only reason I pull in is sometimes if the parking lot is too, and people have parked over the line, so it take me a little bit to get in there, but I just pull in. Other than that, I'm backing in, man. Got to get up out of that thing quick. Or if I'm going grocery shopping, that's another time I don't back
Somebody
in.
mentioned on the text line pulling in at the grocery store because your trunk.
Your
trunk
that's
is
the only time I pull in
The
is when I'm at the
hatchback,
grocery store.
Mhm.
Only time. See, there's moments and opportunities.
All right,
Willie,
one more
I
text.
pull in.
One more text from Sonny, and I think this is a good one. People that back in make it part of their personality, so they are, of course, going to be the ones that call in.
I buy that. I buy that.
I'm
I
a
think Sonny
back-end
is dead
guy.
on
Listen,
right.
you pull in that's a part of your personality. Pull it in, right?
I'll tell you who pulled one out last night. The Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers pulled one out last night. 138-135 in overtime against the New York Knicks. And I saw a lot of stats to this effect, but this is the one that stood out to me. And I believe, Willie, you were the one who sent it to me. Over the past 27 NBA playoffs, teams had a 1,414 record. 0 for 1,414 when trailing by at least 9 points in the final minute of the fourth quarter or overtime, according to the Elias Sports Bureau. Now it's 1 and 1,414 after the Indiana Pacers pulled it off last night. By the way, Tyrese Halliburton would have absolutely been a first ballot inductee into the premature celebration Hall of Fame had the Pacers lost that game because he hit that ridiculous shot that ended up being a two-pointer, gave the crowd the Reggie Miller choke sign, of course, but the game then went to overtime.
I think that may come back to bite him in the rear end.
Also, shout out to Aaron Neesmith.
Yes.
Proud
man.
Vanderbilt
Commodore.
alum.
Goodness.
30 points.
Whew.
8 of 9 from 3.
Man, he
Big part of that comeback
single-handedly brought them back. The shots that he hit at the end, man. Once he got fouled, they didn't call a foul on a three-pointer. But the shots he was hitting at the end, it was like, why aren't y'all? And it wasn't as if the guys were in his grill. For some strange reason, he would have either a wide open three or a guy would be a step and a half away from him. And it's like, this guy done already made 3 3-pointers. Why are y'all not? You're going underneath the screen instead of trying to fight through the screen.
Again, 8 of 9 from 3 for Neesmith last night.
It was bad, man. It was bad. That Knicks, I love the Knicks, and I wanted to be mad. Willie, I seriously wanted to be mad, but they're not my team. I like them, but they're not my team. So when they started to collapse, I'm like, I want to get mad, but I can't.
But
because this is the Knicks.
But the Knicks are like the Maple Leafs, who are like the Kentucky Wildcats. When things go bad, you want to turn on every New York radio station, every New York Knicks podcast. You want to hear how they react.
It is amusing.
Yes.
It is fun.
I'm sure WFAN up in New York is, I don't even want to know what's going on in that station.
The characters that we'll call are priceless.
But that just tells you in basketball, when you look at leads, I look at a 20-point lead with 6 minutes left, and I'm like, oh, that's nothing. Again, nowadays.
Teams were 0 for 1,414 in the past 27 NBA playoffs when trailing by at least 9 points in the final minute of the fourth quarter or overtime before last night.
But I think to your point, Derek, it does seem like even though on the surface, and Adam throws out the stat, nowadays it doesn't seem like it's over because first of all, you can review 3 plays, you can call 3 timeouts, you can hit 3 threes. It could just turn in a hurry.
Exactly.
Turn in a hurry.
And that's what the Knicks game did. Even
they're good at keeping the ball from coming in bounds a lot of times. The team that's behind.
Yeah, and it's like, why?
I don't know why that's become so hard.
It's become so hard. I guess, things are a lot different. Athletes are a lot different. But even when there was like 3 minutes left and New York was up, I think they were up 14, you can start to see things change. And they had brought Brunson back in the game because he was in foul trouble, so he was out 3 minutes. But even at 3 minutes, they were killing the Indiana Pacers.
The Knicks, I believe, went on a 14-0 run after Jalen Brunson picked up his 5th foul and went to the bench.
And they were
run.
dominating. And then the last 2.5 minutes, you just saw they wasn't hustling it as they were prior to that. Indiana was getting the loose balls. They were getting the rebounds. New York couldn't hit free throws. And Karl Anthony Towns had a chance to put the game away, really, if he hits both of his free throws and put them up 4 with like 20 seconds left. He misses one of the free throws. Another guy misses a free throw toward the end. With the guard out of Villanova. What's the other guard name?
Josh Hart.
Yeah, Josh Hart missed a free throw down the end. It's like, dude, y'all talk about 80% free throw shooters missing when it counts. It reminds you of the New York Knicks of the past. John Starks, get to the line. Smith, get to the line. Miss free throws. It happens to the Knicks. Patrick Ewing missed a wide open a finger roll.
Oh, man.
It's just things like this happens to the Knicks. Reggie Miller beats the Knicks in the last 10 seconds. He hits 2 3-pointers in less than 3 or 4 seconds. Stuff like that only happens to the New York Knicks, and we see it once again.
Matthew in Nashville says, the Pacers played inspired basketball last night for Jim Irsay, who was smiling up in heaven. Of course, the somber news yesterday, Colts owner Jim Irsay died at age 65.
I didn't realize he was that young.
I was surprised by that as well.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was. I thought he was.
He's been in the game so long. His
Yeah.
family has been in the game so long. You feel maybe that he was older than 65, but a complex figure is
to say the least
to describe Jim Irsay.
Absolutely. So I'm sure the Indianapolis Colts will, have a decal, on their helmets or jerseys or patch for him. I'm sure the season will be honored. He will be honored, sort of his life that he lived.
Is there an heir apparent to the family?
I don't know
that will take over.
I believe
his father was the owner.
Yeah, and then he
who famously moved them from Baltimore, so he's not very popular in Baltimore. But Jim then took over.
His eldest daughter, I believe, is supposed to
be basically in charge.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that is what the reporting is. And I thought that Jared said it well. And trust me, we'll get to Jared in just a few minutes. But Jared said this yesterday. I loved Jim Irsay's personality as a rival owner, and his Colts were always a problem for the Titans. I always loved how much the Titans beating those Colts personally irked Irsay. But the AFC South and the NFL won't be the same without him.
He was a great, I think, guy that was a good adversary is a good word. Outspoken guy, did his own thing, lived hard, and I think a good rival for the Titans for sure.
Oh, of course.
The personality of the team, I wonder where it will go from here.
Of course, I mean, I think it helped because of Irsay and obviously Peyton Manning. It helped build that rivalry between the Titans and the Colts. So I'm sure he will be missed. The organization will miss him. But like, where do they go from here? Does things change moving forward for the Indianapolis Colts? So
quickly before we go to break, one texter says the Knicks pull into parking spots.
Exactly, and then Indiana backs in. There we go.
I'm looking through some of these other texts that we did not get to. One texter says, Hair Metal Henry says, I'm being serious when I say this, and I'll try to keep it clean. But where the dog park is by HCA headquarters used to be a parking lot. And if you backed into a spot there, let's just say it designated which side of the plate you hit from. I actually backed in there and ate lunch one day. Oh,
wow.
Oh, all right. Well, I did. I should have screened that text before I finished it.
I mean, okay. What's the next text?
What's the next segment, guys?
What's the next text? I mean, I'm not whatever about how he phrased it. I'm just saying I have no comment on it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I think that.
I mean, he's entitled to say it. It wasn't like it was bad. I mean, he didn't say anything bad, but I have
It was
nothing
one
to
of
say
those.
about
It
it.
was one of those texts that you start reading it and you're like, "Oh, this is okay." And as your eyes get to where your mouth is supposed to go, you're like, "Oh," but I've already committed. I've
The
already
words are already out.
Right. I've already committed to it. I've got to commit to it. 615-737-1025. We'll let you continue to text us whether your team pull into a parking spot or team back into a parking spot. But speaking of Jared Stillman, he demands that we owe him and all of you an apology. Do we do it? Let's find out. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Let me tell all of you out there to tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Nashville Sounds take on Scranton Wilkes-Barre at First Horizon Park. Pre-game begins at 6:20 and first pitch is at 6:35. Coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure.
I have a bone to pick with our midday show DVD with hosts Adam Vingan, Derek Mason, and Willie Donick. I believe they owe me and you an apology. And here's why I think they owe me and you an apology. Because yesterday, Brian Callahan got up in front of the media and he was asked about L'Jarius Sneed, and he said that L'Jarius Sneed is still recovering from the quad and knee injuries that he has been managing. And they took the cheese and apparently are still taking the cheese on L'Jarius Sneed's knee and quad. I have to believe at this point in time, most people, even the people that said, let Rand cook, even the people that ignored the fact that Minnesota pulled their offer when it came to L'Jarius Sneed because the medicals were so bad, even though the fact that we played cuts, Carrington Harrison, who does afternoon radio in Kansas City, was saying before Sneed got traded that the knees are worse than you think and he should just take the money and not try to negotiate for more. And you said, what's he know? I think even most of you have realized, yeah, this L'Jarius Sneed thing is a problem.
That was Jared Stillman yesterday on the Stillman and Company program. He warned us at the end of our show that he was going to mention us during his show.
I got so scared when he said that. I went home and I crawled under a table.
Exactly. I just didn't know what. Goodness,
I got
Jared.
into my storm shelter and,
You have a panic room?
the panic room.
The Jared Stillman panic room? You would have to use that almost every day.
Jared's warned us that he's going to slam us on his show.
Oh,
scared.
Jared. Oh, Jared. Wow.
So Jared claims
Jared. Ooh.
Jared claims that we owe him and all of you an apology about L'Jarius Sneed because we took the cheese on the Titans' explanation for his knee and quad issues. So, gentlemen.
Well, first of all, he melded about 6 different things into one thing. There's a lot of different aspects. It's the decision to trade for L'Jarius Sneed, the decision of what to trade for L'Jarius Sneed, the decision of what the contract for the new deal with the L'Jarius Sneed was going to be, and then most importantly, the specifics of the injury to L'Jarius Sneed. What I have gotten all over Jared for, and I think Derek has been by my side for this, is I just don't think it is ever right to speculate or assume that a person's injury that they're telling you is not the truth. Jared is connecting things. He's making assumptions. He's talking to doctors who haven't looked at and treated that specific person. Doctor.
Not plural, just one.
And he's molding it to shape this argument that he's made. So I apologize for nothing at all, even though I agree with certain things, certain points that he's making of the risk involved of trading for a player who has injury questions. That's totally legitimate. But to blend it all in there like that, the problem I have had is he is saying that what I look at as a freak injury that could happen to anybody at any time, taking a helmet to the thigh, he's taking a big leap to then take that injury, which is the reason he had to have the surgery, and connecting it to the bad knees and then connecting it to the incompetence of Rand Carthon. And he puts all of these things connected, and then you've got this long line of things. When my point is the guy took a helmet to the thigh.
Yeah.
And it can be a very serious injury, which it was. And it's taking a long time for him to return to that. And so they definitely came up snake eyes on a risky move. So if I agree with Jared on that it was a risk to start with, but it's kind of a freak thing that he took a helmet to the thigh. So to speculate and to say that they're not being straight with you and all that stuff, I think that's over the top.
So if I have this correct, and if I don't, I know I'm going to hear about it. Jared thinks that the quote unquote quad injury, in his mind, quote unquote quad injury, is a cover up for a knee issue. That the Titans are concocting this, again, massive cover up to avoid saying Snead has degenerative knees. We should have known that all along. And now we're trying to cover our asses so that we don't look silly.
Right.
Put this in.
So he's making an assumption, which I don't think there's any evidence that's true. He for a fact does have knee issues. Then he got a knee to the thigh, and Jared's blending it all together.
Okay, you might as well just put this second right underneath Watergate. Okay, just put it second under conspiracies and things and people hiding things and everything else. Put this right underneath, Watergate or any other, thing that's been hidden and sort of found out and all this other stuff. So just put what Jared's saying in regards to his knee / quad. Let's just throw that right in.
So what
there.
you're saying is JFK assassination,
Yes.
Legarius Snead's
Exactly. There we go.
on the list of conspiracy theories.
Yes, right there. So we gonna throw that up there. But listen, I'm like Willie. I apologize for nothing when it comes to this. I apologize for nothing. As a matter of fact, I'm going to apologize to the listeners for Jared, on behalf of Jared, that he made y'all think that y'all needed some type of an apology. So I apologize to you for that, because Jared is trying to convince y'all need some type of apology from DVD, which isn't the case, because you're not going to get it, because I don't think we said anything that would warrant an apology. Listen, when you're writing papers and all this other stuff, you got to cite, things. They usually want you to give more than just one,
footnotes.
Footnote. They want you to give more than just one. When you turn in the paper, you have one footnote. The teacher's gonna look at you like, serious? I need a little bit more.
I learned in journalism school, because I did attend journalism school, which Jared Stillman did not, and that's okay. But I attended journalism school, and all of the places that I worked for, multiple sources.
Yes, cite multiple sources.
Jared
right?
Stillman is a one source show. He has made that clear. And
he does
that isn't
not
to say that he has been wrong about things that he has heard. I'm just saying that I am a multiple source type of person.
And that was my thing to Jared. I didn't say, Jared, go ask the doctor that did the surgery. I even stopped him when he said that. I said, Jared, that's not what I'm saying. I know you can't do that. That's against the law. I know you can't, but don't just go and ask your buddy, and give him the information, and then, get an answer for him. Go ask somebody else. They may have a different answer for you. That's all I was saying. So I don't have to apologize for that. I just wanted you to get more than just one person, because you kept going to this one person. And I kept saying, well, did you go to someone else? I can't go to the doctor who did the surgery. I know, Jared, you can't go to the doctor that did the surgery. Go to someone else beside a buddy of yours. Because typically when you go to a buddy of yours and you give him the information a certain way, he's gonna say, like your buddy said, Jared, well, based upon what you told me, yeah, it would be this. But if you would have asked someone else, maybe they wouldn't have given you that particular response. That's all I was saying to Jared.
We knew, as Willie said, that the Chiefs had to manage Snead's knee issue. He didn't practice much in Kansas City, but I saw a player over 3 seasons who played 48 out of 51 games for the Chiefs, played basically every snap in those games. And as Willie also said, it was a risk to trade for Legarius Snead. None of us are saying it wasn't. What I am not prepared to do is say, well, this whole quad thing is just an excuse for the Titans to cover up their tracks, that they should have known better about Legarius Snead.
No, because I don't know what he's wanting us to apologize for specifically, because he's the one that's got all the conspiracy theories, and
he just wants us to say it's a knee
blend
injury.
all the injuries together.
But that's what he wants us to say, it's a knee injury, when in fact it's a quad. And but no. But he sort of, I don't know if he meant to do it or just slipped out. But he said at the end of all of that, he said, well, the quad is attached to the knee, which means he could have had the quad injury that affected the knee that you already had to manage. Not necessarily that he had another knee injury. It's just now we got to manage this a little bit different because we got the quad that's connected to the knee, and we want to make sure we take our time in bringing him back.
But I think part of Jared's argument too implies that Snead is a bum that doesn't want to play, that isn't trying to come back.
No, I don't. I'm not going to say I think he's saying the Titans are lying about the knee injury. It really was a knee injury and not a quad injury.
Yes.
And they can't say that because they brought him in here and signed him knowing that he had a problem or they had to manage the knee. I think that's what he's saying.
So I think the way to wrap all of this up, I turn to my spiritual advisor, Larry David. To quote Larry David before his duel against Lin-Manuel Miranda in the season 9 finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm, quote, no apology is forthcoming. 615-737-1025. What do y'all think? Do we owe Jared an apology? 615-737-1025. This week's Nashville's best deal is Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon with a buy one, get one free admission. Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon, where parking tubes and sunscreen are always free. Get this great deal now at thegamenashville.com/deals while supplies last.
Happy Thursday, everyone. This is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not the first time. Set a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to come up a few short. But I got some news for you because I got some solutions because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his staff understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach. And as I told y'all yesterday, I went in yesterday morning, was out of there in an hour, and they did all of these things to make sure that I accomplish my weight goal. And they would do the same for you, and they will give you a comprehensive weight loss program like they gave me, which is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain. They told me what my root cause was, even though I knew it anyway, but it's good to hear it from someone else with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize their program specific to you and you only as they did me. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
Tune into 1025 The Game tonight for your SEC baseball. Have to hear about it for 2 straight hours this afternoon. That's probably true. I would be willing to make that sacrifice for you, Josh, to save yourself of 2 hours of Jared continuing to rant about this on Stillman and Company. Eric says, tell that nerd to go kick rocks. No need for apologies. You think I feel like nerd is something that Jared's never been.
Nah,
called.
I don't think he's ever been that cool to be a nerd. And I don't ever think he's been that cool to be cool. So he's just like the guy in the middle, you know.
Dustin in Hopkinsville says the Titans just out here using the board game operation to determine player injuries. That's the real problem. They throw monopoly money at those players. Wes in Clarksville says, I don't care if it's a knee injury or quad injury. My problem is the Titans brought another injury susceptible player to be a number 1 player and paid him a boatload of money, and then he barely sees the field. I do want to point out one thing, Derek, that was the previous administration.
Yes. But they're Pound Brinkered in this too.
Right. Chad Brinker, that is true. Chad Brinker is a link to the past, as I like to call him, among other things, the supreme ruler of football. Chad Brinker is a link to the past. But one thing we have noticed in the early days of the Mike Borgonzi era, with all of the free agent signings, we talked about Dan Moore a little bit yesterday, Xavier Woods, among others, they play. They're on the field. They're available. So it appears that the new regime, at least the Mike Borgonzi aspect of it, will not be as susceptible, hopefully, to bringing in players with significant injury history.
Yeah, and I think Borgonzi, what he did this offseason, whether you want to say it was him, Brinker, I don't care. But I think what they did this offseason, that's what they wanted to emphasize, not bringing guys that had been injured or had injury history. Look at all the guys, or some of the guys, Zeitler, Lockett, guys that they brought in. These guys don't miss games. These guys are available. Last year, bringing in Cushenberry, he was available. Then he ends up getting a freak, injury, and not a freak, but he just sustains an injury and he's gone for the remainder of the season. So they started last year with trying to bring in, this year we're trying to bring in guys that were not often on the injury list in regards to missing games. So it started this offseason, and you just hope it continues. Now, even though they brought in a bunch of guys that haven't missed games, doesn't mean they're not going to miss games. They can get hurt while they're here and end up missing games. Cushenberry, prime example. He was a guy that didn't miss games. What happened when he got here? He misses half the season because of an injury. So those things are going to happen. But I think the fans, it's not so much, to me at least, and I think this is where the fans are coming from. It's not so much of, they think that L'Jarius Sneed didn't hurt the thigh. It's because of the past history, like the Titans. And even though it wasn't this regime, but the Titans haven't been clear when it comes to injury. The head coach has been dismissive, in a sense, when it comes to injury. Again, he told us about an injury to a first rounder, albeit it was a couple of years ago in Traylon Burks, some years ago. But he decided to tell us basically as a dump at the end of the week, Burks had injury. I know Burks wasn't playing. I get that. Burks had injury. Okay, you just going to drop that in like that? Like, when did he have injuries? Today? Surgery today? Oh, no. He had surgery last week. And you're just now telling us about this? This is not an off-season surgery. This is an in-season surgery. So when you do stuff like that, it makes the fan base and people like Jared, sort of question, and I get it. And I understand. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, but it questions whether, are you really telling us everything or not? But listen, we don't expect organizations to be completely upfront with us. We just don't.
And in my experience covering professional teams for as long as I did, you have to have a healthy skepticism.
Yes.
I mean, I have had coaches tell me straight to my face that they lied to me about something they previously told me. So I have a healthy skepticism about things that I hear from professional teams and college teams too. I have a healthy skepticism. So, but I'm not making the leap that Jared is about L'Jarius Sneed. So that's why, again, to quote Larry David, no apology is forthcoming.
Well, I mean, I don't think I deserve to, hand out apologies, or I have to hand out apologies, or I feel I have to. I know Willie doesn't. So, Jared, you're not getting an apology over here. I think he knew he wasn't going to get an apology, but he just had to say that anyway. He knew exactly. Him knowing us, and he said, I've been knowing these guys for 10 years almost, if not longer. And you thought you was going to get an apology, especially in this situation? Come on, man.
I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the he wants.
That's right. We don't apologize to you, Jared. You apologize to us.
Yeah, right.
That's who you apologize for us for being just so overboard with all this stuff. Apologize to us for being such a overboard conspiracy theorist.
Have either of you watched the show Schitt's Creek? And I can say that because it's a show. One of the characters on the show who had a hard time apologizing. This was his form of an apology. Quote, I am remorseful over an action that I participated in.
That's Jared.
Which my wife says to me sometimes. But yes, Jared, I have a hard time imagining Jared saying the word sorry.
Jared
might be remorseful over an action that he participated in.
Jared has not, and I repeat, has not, even though there have been occasions where it's just like Jared, seriously, he will not utter those words out of his mouth when it comes to his job. When he's talking about his job, now, when he's at home, I'm sure he'll say sorry to the girlfriend, and if he's done something to the parent, he'll do that on that end. But there's a separation, personal and business. When it's business, he's never apologizing.
I'm just imagining him on the air going, guys, I'm so I can't say that word. I'm so
you know what I mean.
I'm so Wes is in Hermitage on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Wes, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yeah, guys, y'all kind of hit it on the head, but I guess I'm going to answer this question with the question. When was the last time this guy apologized to DVD or the Finn or L'Jarius Sneed? Not that he's owed an apology, but it's just like, you can't demand an apology from another show when you literally talk about every show on this station. It's not how it works, man. Sorry, Jared.
You got your people coming at you, Jared. See? No, but thank you, Wes. Listen, he has his opinion on, this L'Jarius Sneed whole issue. And, my thing with him isn't, the fact, because everybody knew when L'Jarius Sneed came in what he was dealing with, the management of the knee. But, sort of the silver lining was, well, he played all the games. He played the most plays. So obviously it's not to a point where he's going to start missing games. Okay, so you bring him in. You're managing him as a player. He doesn't have any setbacks in camp or anything.
Again, he missed 3 games over a 3-year span.
Exactly.
His final 3 seasons in Kansas City.
So if we're going by we're going by what we've seen in the past, then it's like, okay, he's good. You didn't expect or anticipate that he would then have another injury, during the season. My thing was, hey, listen, he can go out here and get injured. As long as it's not the knee, then okay. But he the quad gets injured. How? He said he took a helmet to the knee. I don't know. But he said the quad was injured, which automatically affects the knee. So I believe until I find out. See, sometimes I think it's hard for people to believe like what someone is like right in their face. They no, it's not. Well, when something else comes out telling you something different, then okay, then you can not believe that. But everything's pointing toward it was a quad injury. Now, did it affect his knee? Absolutely, it did. I believe 100% it affected his knee and it set him back. But I don't think it started out as a knee problem. I think it was the quad problem, which eventually it did, affect the knee.
Again, no apology is forthcoming. Sorry, Jared. I guess that's an apology. I'm apologizing for not apologizing.
Well, I mean, you could do that.
615-737-1025. Our weekly conversation with George Blaster is coming up next. We'll hit a lot of topics with George. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace Fingan and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, George Plaster in studio with us. Hello, George.
Hello, Adam. Hello, Hall of Famer.
Hey, what's going on, George?
What's going on,
Did they
Willie?
give you the lay of the land? Did they give you the lay of the land?
They did.
Oh, good. Great.
Very
great.
impressive.
Thank you.
Willie, how are you?
Where's the Hall of Famer?
Well,
I'm in the Winter Park High School Hall of Fame.
See, there you go.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you worked with me for 23 years and
Yes.
appeared to keep your sanity,
Yes,
which a lot of people would say might be your biggest achievement.
maybe. That's very possible. That's very possible. But it's good to have you here in the studio, George. It's been a while. The
Man.
last time I think we did a show in the studio. What year would that have
Oh,
been?
my
Like
goodness.
2016?
2016?
2016.
What year were
2016.
you inducted into the Winter Park High School Hall of Fame?
2002, I think.
All right, let's see, because I have found the website. I'm looking for you. There he is.
Willie
Yep.
Donick.
Look at that.
They spelled my name wrong.
WILLIE. Look at that.
No, why do they have that
You
pic-
can't make the
Oh,
Hall of
Willie,
Fame if you,
you
don't spell your
look
name right.
exactly like you should have been on Grease
Okay,
or
can
the
I see
outside
this
or the
thing?
Outsiders. You'd have been
Oh, my God.
the Outsiders. You'd have been the guy.
He'd be there with Vinny Barbarino.
Yes, absolutely.
I was hoping there would be a list of
An action
achievements.
shot? Oh,
It's
they
just
don't
a
have
picture.
that? They don't have what's on
No,
the
it's
plaque
just
on
a
there?
picture of the
Yeah.
it's just a picture of the inductees. I thought there would be Willie Donick was
Back when I hired Willie, which was like 1993, he still had hair, but you
Yes.
could kind of tell that it was not forever.
He didn't have forever hair.
It was
I
kind
think,
of a Brillo pad.
yeah, and I think
Ooh.
a couple years later when I met Aaron, it was even progressed another.
Oh wow.
So she had to kind of make the call. Hey,
Yeah. Cut
gotta
it
look
off.
down in the future here. What's going on here? Do I really like this guy? Because if I'm liking him for his hair, the
Ugh.
hair may not be
Yeah.
around forever.
Oops.
But then again, if you wanted to, you could have just went and got a hair transplant, man. If it
Well,
was-
yeah,
if it
I
was,
chose
you
not
know,
to do that.
Exactly. I don't blame you.
George, you've brought to our attention a story written by Adam Sparks in the Knoxville News Sentinel about the Tennessee Volunteers and the SEC. What did you find out in this story?
Well, first of all, the whole NIL thing is a mess. So you've got the NIL, you've got the state passing different laws than what ultimately will be a part of the settlement that the judge at some point, between now and the end of the world will approve, which each school then has like 20.8 million to spend. So Sankey, who I happen to think is a hot air windbag, put out some sort of a kind of a threat that if Tennessee and Vanderbilt don't abide by the court's ruling, if they try to fall back on what the state has put out there, that they risk expulsion. Okay, first of all, I don't believe that this man has the authority to throw Tennessee and Vanderbilt out by himself. That's number one. Can't prove that one. I've sent a text to Tony Barnhart to say, can he really do this? And secondly, let's play this out a little bit. So, Willie, what do you think Vandy's market is if Sankey throws them out?
ACC? What is their market? Like, where do
Yeah,
they
in
go?
other words, they're a free agent. Who wants them?
Probably not a lot of. I mean, I would say they're not super high on the list, but they could go to the Big Ten, the ACC. You would make the rounds,
Okay,
right?
but I don't think the Big Ten's
They're probably
frothing
full. Yeah,
over Vandy.
I would say ACC would more be a fit.
Now, let's take Tennessee. Totally different story. The Big Eight, the Big Ten, the ACC are all saying, man,
Sure.
Tennessee, come with us. You've got programs that kick butt. You have markets like Nashville and Knoxville that we would love to have, and we can stick it to the SEC a little bit. If I'm the president of the University of Tennessee, now this is me playing hawk instead of dove. I'm sending Sankey a letter saying, don't you ever threaten us. We were here before you came on our little planet, and we'll be here after you're gone. Shut the hell up.
Here's some of the nuts and bolts from Adam Sparks in the Knoxville News Sentinel. A new Tennessee law triggered the power conferences of college sports into demanding member schools like the University of Tennessee and Vanderbilt to sign a loyalty pledge over new player pay rules or face possible expulsion. Knox News confirmed the existence of the loyalty document through a source with direct knowledge of the situation. The document is being circulated by the ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and the SEC. It demands that member schools agree to follow new rules involving paying players despite state laws giving the freedom to circumvent the rules. And the pledge also requires schools to waive their right to sue the NCAA or conferences if they disagree with the implementation of those rules.
So are they saying that the state is saying, hey, listen, pay the players whatever y'all come up with, y'all pay them. But the SEC is saying, no, we want to, have is it a cap that they want? Or
yeah, essentially this judge out in California that the NCAA and all the people that matter have been dealing with, they've focused on a $20.8 million cap that everybody believes eventually will come into effect. Okay, the only thing I'm saying is I get that they want all the schools to play by the same rules.
Kind of like the collective bargaining agreement,
right,
in the NHL where everybody's got $88 million to spend.
But I mean, you think of all the schools in the SEC that have cheated their butt off, that have gotten caught over the years, and the word expulsion has never come up. I have never heard in 40 years of covering this stuff the word expulsion. Okay, so Sankey has sort of tossed this out somewhere, and good for Adam and whoever that they got this. But I'm sitting there saying to myself, number one, he doesn't have the authority by himself to throw these schools out. And secondly, if he throws Tennessee out, it changes the landscape of expansion.
Yeah.
Like nobody's thought about.
Right. You wouldn't want to expel.
I'm with you. I would call this bluff.
A valuable school.
Threat, it's a threat that has no meat on the bone. And if I'm the president at Tennessee, I'm just telling him, listen, don't you ever threaten us again. Because if you do, we'll lead the charge to get you the hell out.
Well, one thing that you brought up that I think of right away that I hadn't thought of till you said it. Over the years, a lot of the member schools of the SEC have been caught.
The institutions of higher learning.
They have cheated.
Have they taken shortcuts?
They have.
Probably so. Yeah.
Liberties.
There's a lot of footprint.
Have they bent
toward that
maybe an
road.
occasion broken a rule?
There's a reason CM Newton ended up at Kentucky.
Yes, he did.
And the reason is that an Emory air freight package opened in midair, and oops. Wow, there's a lot of money. Let's count it.
Cash money.
9,890. 10,000.
Yes, it was directed for a Kentucky recruit.
What did Eric Manuel?
Eric Manuel was the guy, yes. And that was back in the late 80s. It put Kentucky on probation. CM Newton left Vanderbilt to become the athletic director, hired Rick Pitino to be the coach.
Now, I put it out there that he left because he signed Willie.
That did happen.
And 10 days later, he bolted. And there was an angry little confrontation one day in another radio station's studio where Coach Newton heard this for the first time, that he left to go to Kentucky because he signed Willie and,
wasn't really sure that he could continue the greatness.
Yeah. So during the timeout, he says to me, I better not ever hear that come out of your mouth again. Remember, he was pissed.
Coach Newton had my back.
Oh,
He had my
man.
back.
And I told him, I said, you're about 10 years late to the party. We've been doing this forever.
Right, and the numbers are in. Willie didn't have a great career then.
But he liked you. I think
he did.
I think he felt bad that, oh my Lord, he's had to work with George all these years.
Kind of
What did-
slack.
What did he do to deserve that?
Exactly. But
Now, isn't
here's the point that I think you make, which is a good one. Everybody can sign this. Okay, $20.8 million sounds great.
Right.
Do you think all the schools are going
No.
to actually pay 20.8, or they'll find a way to get another 10, 15, 20 million
Sure.
around? They'll go around this rule somehow. That's the SEC tradition.
You know, I kept thinking about high school where you take a test and you signed at the bottom the loyalty pledge. And I'm like,
Right.
This has got some beaver cleaver in it. It's got happy days, you know,
Yeah.
but you signed it. So what?
I mean, isn't this something that should be, and I could be wrong on this one, but isn't this something that should be collectively bargained in a
It
sense?
sure seems like it. I mean, look, we are. Billy Derrick said this to me about a week ago. Every week, we get a new story that is dumber than the week before, that's dumber than the week before. I mean, we have so lost our way. It's not even funny.
We're a long way from having a system across the board for college sports that's going to work. For example, you hit this on your show yesterday. We discussed it, but you had a legal expert, of course, going way
Prominent
back.
Nashville attorney,
Prominent
Jack
Nashville
Waddy,
attorney.
who may have some past history, Derek, with me.
Yes. So what did he say about the Zakai Ziegler thing? Because this would open up a very big can of worms.
Yeah.
Because if Ziegler wins the case, and I'm sure every college player who has played 4 years,
The gate is open now. If
will
he
want the
does.
5th year.
Well,
Right?
first of all, the last time that the NCAA won a court case, the Braves were in Milwaukee.
Exactly.
So it's been a while.
They've been taking
That-
some L's. They're like the Washington Generals
right.
against the Harlem Globetrotters. Their record is
Always
not very
losing.
good.
They are
Every time.
basically Al Davis versus the NFL. You remember how many times
Yeah.
Davis kept beating them in court? So, you know, that they haven't done real well in court. Jack's take is that he doesn't think that Zakai Ziegler's suit has as much meat on the bone as Diego Pavia's. When Diego Pavia filed his deal, there wasn't a coach in sight who would say to me, I think he's got a real shot. But Jack ended up talking to Diego Pavia's attorneys down in Texas before he came on the show. And he shocked me that day and said, Pavia is going to win this case. I don't think he feels as strong about Ziegler's. What Ziegler's trying to argue is that, you know, in COVID, everybody got essentially a 5th year.
Right.
Why doesn't he? And who knows what the court system that will do. The court system, do they really understand college athletics when they make these decisions?
Well, it's like the old arbitrators when baseball players started taking the grievances to the arbitrator for contracts, which was what was the famous line by the arbitrator?
What's an RBI?
This is the guy determining Adam Vingan's case, right? He goes in front of the arbitrator. I give you all of the stats for Adam, and then the other side, the club says, well, he wasn't quite as good. Adam, you've covered plenty of hockey arbitration cases. And oftentimes the arbitrator is not a fan of the sport, has no idea. He or she is just making a case. So that was a famous line where the media,
Clueless.
right, the media went nuts at the time. This was the early 90s or
Yeah.
whatever. And said, how could you have this? The person that's making the final call doesn't understand the basics of the game.
But do you think the NCAA will even put up a fight? It's almost like it's closing time, and NCAA just want to get everybody out. So it's like, okay, we are not going to even really fight it. Give them the 5th year, but once you give them the 5th year, it may open up others,
Yeah,
which I don't mind. If you want to say, hey, everybody has 5 years of eligibility, then okay. Because essentially that's what it turns out being, because a lot of kids, well, at least when we were going to college, they got redshirted their first year automatically. So you knew you're going to be spending 5 years in college more than likely. So I don't understand. Just go back to it and give everybody 5 years.
Here's one thing I asked Jack. I said, okay, they go to court and they present their case for Ziegler. The judge is going to sit there and say, well, what stops then Joe Blow at Duquesne from saying, well, I want a 6th year? And before you know it, we have people playing who have AARP cards.
Of course.
For years, BYU has had this advantage of the Mormon mission and being able to bring kids back when they're 25. I don't know about y'all, but I think there's a distinct advantage to a 25-year-old being guarded by an 18-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases,
Yes.
I would say absolutely. No question about it.
How about yours?
I think when I was 25, I could probably have helped some.
Did you have the
teams.
foot speed? Could you have guarded Ziegler?
Probably not very well. Probably not very well. But
You have to use your length.
I did ask myself a lot. I said, when I watch these guys play, because most teams now with the COVID have guys that are 23, 24, sometimes 25. I want to say that by the end of the season, AJ Hogard was 24. I think maybe Chris Magnon also, I think 24. Those guys have an edge. With being older, playing more, I do think that I could tell you I probably was a lot better at 24, 25 than I was at 18 or 19 for sure. Whether that would have made me way more effective, I don't know, but I would have been better. I think.
Derek, at the Y, I sucked at 18 and I sucked at 24.
So it didn't matter.
It didn't get a bit better.
But don't you think that if you want to put it at 5 years, just say 5 years, everybody gets 5 years for eligibility. If you leave 4, 3, okay, but you have 5 years. Don't you think now with the advent of the NIL and the money being able to make, these athletes are able to make, a lot of these athletes know after college, I'm not playing professional sports,
right?
But I can maximize my earnings in 5 years and don't, because I know I'm not going to play after this. Wouldn't it be better if you just say everybody gets 5 years of eligibility, 5 years, nothing more, nothing less, to allow those that know that they're not going to the professional ranks? They may be hell of a college players, but we know you're not playing in the pros. So they are able to maximize their potential of making money. In that 5th year, if indeed you are taking NIL money and you're one of the tops, you pay for your own scholarship. That scholarship then can be given to somebody else.
I like it. Commissioner Mason.
Yes.
Hall of Famer and
part-time commissioner
and smart educator.
And it might be simpler in that we're not worried about waivers and whether a guy was injured and didn't play enough games so he gets another year. Just say 5 years across the board. And if you get hurt, that's just life. Some things are tough in life, but you have a 5-year window. We're giving you the right to transfer. We're giving you the right to earn your NIL, but you have 5 years. So I might sign up for that.
So let's take Ziegler. Okay. Let's say that the judge says, yep, you'll get an extra year. Ziegler is sitting there saying to himself, I'm going to get between 2 and 4 million somewhere because I'm a difference maker. And Tennessee, on the other hand, has already signed Jacoby
Gillespie. Is it Jacoby Gillespie?
From Maryland.
Yes. Part of the Crab
right?
Five.
Yes, part of the Crab Five. Yes.
Okay.
From the Terps.
So they've already signed
Jacoby
a point
Gillespie.
guard, and it's possible they don't need him. Now, I'll admit, I think they jump on. I think they call the Haslams and say, bring the Brinks truck over.
We need to redo the budget.
We need another $4 million. But think about what Ziegler could get just in the SEC alone if he's a free agent.
Oh,
because he's a difference maker.
I think some people would be retabulating
and
and making some phone calls. No question about it. We talked about this yesterday. Would he show some loyalty to Tennessee and take what they could give him, given these circumstances? Or would he just go out knowing kind of what Nico found out, right? Once everybody has allocated their budget, which most of them have by now,
right?
Who's got that kind of money lying around?
That's an
That's a
interesting
question.
point in it,
A lot
which
of
is
those,
why
Texas.
I said Tennessee
Yeah.
will pick up the phone,
Right.
call one of the Haslams.
Yeah.
But then you've
They'll-
got to
they'll
work
stay
the playing
away
time.
from Jimmy and D.
Oh, they'll figure that out.
Yeah. Then how, if you're Gillespie, or is that his name? Gillespie. What are you thinking all of a sudden if the senior point guard captain is back?
It is Gillespie.
Gillespie.
If you're getting the money that you want,
Jacoby
You're getting the
Gillespie.
money, but now all of a sudden your minutes could be very much altered, right?
yeah,
That's
but
not what you thought you had.
I would tend to think that Barnes, they would understand that situation prior, and they would try to make the minutes as even as possible. But you got to know, if Zakai Ziegler does come back, even with bringing Gillespie in, Gillespie has to understand, like, man, yeah, he's gonna get maybe 4 extra minutes than I'm gonna get, and I got to live with it.
Did Adam just give the "we got to go to the break" signal?
He
I
did.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, because there's one you haven't seen. What is this? What is that signal?
Is that a 60-second timeout?
Oh no, what was that signal, Willie?
That signal is I'm supposed to read a live spot, but play the tape record. Play the tape version.
Phil, do something.
I just have to try to keep the show on track, you know.
Yeah.
And we love you for it.
George, before we let you go, we do have a very important question to ask.
Really?
Are you a pull into a parking spot guy or a back into a parking spot guy?
Oh, pull. Let me tell you why. Because, and I think Willie's there with me. So, when you go to, what did they call the driver's ed?
Uh-huh.
Driver's ed was a disaster. I can no more parallel park. If you could tape me trying to parallel park, it's embarrassing. I'll get out of the car when I think I've, properly parallel parked, and you're like, oh my God, I can't let anybody see this. So we pull in. We never backwards and parallel park. I avoid that like the plague.
That's because you just don't, you're not good at it.
Oh, I suck at it.
Yeah,
it's
so-
awful. It's embarrassing.
Man, you should have mastered it, man.
They didn't teach that. They may have taught that at Michigan State. Didn't teach
Mumford,
it.
man, Mumford.
Didn't teach
Detroit Mumford High. They taught me how to back in.
Is that going to come up in the Hall of Fame speech?
It may.
Mumford.
It may just come up. Oh, absolutely.
Thanks to Mumford.
Absolutely. Mumford Mustangs and Coach Lynch, Robert Lynch. By the way, quickly, here's a quick
Was he
story.
your football coach
He was
and
my
driver's ed
football
coach?
I'm gonna tell you, he was my football coach. He didn't coach driver's ed, but he coached some other stuff that maybe he shouldn't have been coaching or teaching. But
Like what?
what was he teaching? That it was like, dude, he was teaching history. I think he was teaching history,
Home ec.
or it was
Balance your bank
not
book
PE.
101.
It was another class he was teaching. It was like, Coach, you just setting out the stuff and you ain't doing nothing. Like, just watch it over the class. But we all love Coach Lynch, man. We all love Coach Lynch.
Planet Earth wasn't a thing back then,
Exactly.
but
So,
you couldn't just turn on Planet
but
Earth.
here's a
for-
quick story.
for
This
now.
is how dedicated Coach Lynch was, and you got to understand, he was a track and football.
Oh, we're
coach.
going to get serious here,
Oh
aren't
yeah,
we?
Coach Lynch. We drove from Detroit to Ann Arbor during the day for a track meet. We drove back 8:00 at night, 9:00 at night, and no lie, he didn't have no headlights. You think? And he knew, George. He knew he didn't have no headlights before he went up there. George, we got
importantly-
It's a
behind.
violation.
We got, but he's tried this before too. He's tried, taping. What was it? He taped a flashlight so it could be the headlight. No lie. But we drove behind an 18-wheeler, basically all the way home. He had brake lights, like tail lights, but he didn't have no front lights. So we drove 8, 9 o'clock at night behind an 18-wheeler, basically all the way home until we got to where they had street lights. Because driving from Detroit to Ann Arbor, there's a portion of it where it's just completely dark. The highway is dark. And the only thing that's lighting it up is the headlight. So we
Did
had
the
to ride.
parentals ever know this?
Parents, they loved Coach Lynch. They didn't care.
They didn't know about the headlights.
I know we didn't tell them
Okay,
about
yeah,
that.
that's
But
probably-
the parents love Coach
Spare
Lynch.
them the details.
Yeah,
Yes.
they love Coach Lynch. They didn't care.
Don't ask, don't
He's a
tell.
good man.
Exactly.
He got us
Absolutely.
killed.
He got you there.
He got us there and got us back. So there you go. Coach
George
Lynn.
But he
Blaster.
hooked up a flashlight.
He hooked up
To
a
try to make a
flashlight.
Taped it up. Taped it up to the
A
side.
makeshift.
Adam, it's at this point you
Yes.
appear to have lost control.
I have. It's always great to see you, George Plaster. You can listen to the George Plaster Show weekdays from 3 to 5 on 94.9 The Fan. Always great to have you in studio for our weekly conversation.
Thank you.
615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
everything happened. Along those lines of adjustment and reflection, do you look back on the way everything happened with Levis? Just hey, he's the quarterback, he's the starter. Do you look back on that, and does that influence how you're handling Cam Ward this year?
Yeah, I think we're all parts of, our experiences lead us to how we operate, and you live and you learn through some of them. You make adjustments, you grow, you do things differently. And certainly there's parts of that, I learned lessons in, and I've learned to move forward and you try to grow and do it better the next time. I think that's everybody's goal, coaches, players. I think humans in general try to do that. So yeah, there's definitely parts of that I think we could have done a better job, and our job is to do it better the next time. And so that's where we're at.
That was Brian Callahan the other day talking about Will Levis. By the way, Cam Ward yesterday signed his rookie contract, reported 4 years, $48.75 million, including a $32.1 million signing bonus, according to Jordan Schultz. But the news from the other day out of Brian Callahan's news conference was that Will Levis and Cam Ward are splitting reps evenly as the Titans work through phase 2 of offseason activities. And of course, there are some Titans fans who don't like the idea of that because they want Cam Ward. They want Cam Ward all the time, and they want Cam Ward now, damn it. By the way, before we get to more, Josh on our text line, Willie, says he lives in Leesburg, Virginia, but works for a cable company and drives by Winter Park High School every day.
Home of the Wildcats.
That's Orlando, right outside Orlando, right?
Josh, stop in. Is there a section of the school with the pictures?
No, the Hall of Fame is located in the Farmers Market, which is right in the heart of Winter Park Avenue, which is a very nice.
Is Winter Park a public or private?
Public. Big, huge school. Very, very large in size. Very close to Rollins College, a good Division II school.
Okay,
that's down there.
That's right outside of Orlando, right?
Yeah, it's maybe one town over from downtown Orlando, about 15
Is
minutes.
it
about 40 minutes from the Magic Kingdom, Disney World,
north, south,
depending on the traffic.
So Josh, stop into the farmers market apparently.
Yeah,
where the Winter Park High
and
School
see my misspelled first name.
Yeah.
Maybe they could have got my name right in the plaque, but
cool picture too, Willie. I like the picture.
Oh yeah, I had the flow back.
Yeah,
we
you
did
did.
tweet
You
it
did
out.
have the
we
flow.
did tweet it out at 1025.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
the
sir.
flow. The flow is good, man.
Y'all can see Willie's flow.
So I am a Hall of Famer.
Yes, he is.
But I'm sure the both of you and many of our listeners have heard of a pump and dump scheme. Are you familiar with this? A pump and dump scheme?
Pump and dump.
Pump and dump. Here's the actual definition. Fraudsters typically spread false or misleading information to create a buying frenzy that will pump up the price of a stock and then dump shares of the stock by selling their own shares at the inflated price. Once the fraudsters dump their shares and stop hyping the stock price typically falls and investors lose money. That's what the Titans are doing with Will Levis. It's a pump and dump scheme. They are showing other teams that, hey, Will Levis and Cam Ward, they're in a competition. They're hoping to boost Will Levis's confidence, make him look a little bit better in practice, give him an opportunity with the ones, I assume, and then they'll trade him to the highest bidder. And Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports pointed this out the other day. Easton compared it to Jacksonville in 2021 with Trevor Lawrence, who was the number 1 overall pick, and Gardner Minshew. Urban Meyer claimed there was an open competition at starting quarterback, although we all knew that there was not an open competition at starting quarterback. And guess what happened? In late August of 2021, the Jags turned around and traded Minshew to the Eagles for a conditional 2022 6th-round pick. So that's what the Titans are trying to do here. They're trying to pump and dump Will Levis.
I can't see. It's hard for me to see Will Levis on this roster when the season starts. Now he can be. I'm not saying he's not, but it's just hard for me to envision him a part of this roster when they open up the first game of the season. And it's not because I don't think Will Levis can be a backup. I think Will Levis he's going to play in this league a long time. I think he will. I think he will play in this league as a long time because he is a backup quarterback. He's a guy that can come in and play a few games here and there. But I think, in essence, he is a true backup quarterback, and I think he could be one of the better backup quarterbacks in the National Football League. But I just can't see under these circumstances that he will remain on this roster. So when the Titans say, well, he will, start off the starter or split reps, of course he will do that at the beginning. But they're hoping that, or they're betting that after maybe a week or so, it will start to come into vision that, okay, the more and more we practice, the less and less Will Levis will get. And then ultimately, you try to trade him away. But I don't think that's going to happen unless another team gets an injury right away. I don't think that's going to happen until at least one of those preseason games is played, or one of those joint practices is played. And then I think it will probably ramp up a little bit more in regards to Will Levis possibly being moved.
Right. As I said, Gardner Minshew was in a quote unquote competition with Trevor Lawrence in training camp in 2021. And near the end of training camp in 2021, the Jaguars traded him to the Eagles. We've mentioned Malik Willis. Malik Willis was traded at the end of training camp to the Green Bay Packers. I predict that Will Levis will be traded at the end of training camp. My gut tells me, and I've been wrong before, my gut's not always right. My gut tells me that week 1, Will Levis isn't on the roster.
I don't anticipate him being on the roster week 1 as well. Again, I think he can, if he wants to potentially become a starting quarterback, it's not going to be here. It's not, at least not within the first 2 or 3 years, because they're going to give Cam Ward every opportunity to prove to them he's not the guy. But I believe Cam is the guy, and I think you will find that out very quickly. So I think it would be better for Will Levis. And this is the tricky part for players, because if you go out and say, I want to be traded, or you sort of give that indication, then people say, well, you don't like competition. You didn't want to be here anyway. Let it play out. All this other stuff. Oh, no. What he's trying to do is he's trying to find a place for him where he can have an opportunity to potentially be a starter. And we know he's not going to be a starter here in Nashville. That's just the way it's going to happen. So if I'm Will Levis in this camp, I am right around camp time as we start to get to going. I am looking for a team that I can facilitate a trade with.
I think too much of the pump and dump, if too much is revolving around that, it would be nice to get an asset for him. I think that's fair to say. And I think we all agree that it might be good for Will Levis and the Titans to have him getting a fresh start somewhere. That might be the end result that they're both looking for. But I think to do too much of pump and dump, in other words, you got to do some pumping to get the dump, right?
Yes.
To do the pumping,
Pause.
you've got to give him reps. And if you're giving him too much rep, then you're taking away reps from Cam Ward. I'm sorry. I set us off on this.
I'm sorry, Willie. I'm sorry. We're being kids here. We're being kids.
There's a text from Andrew from Dover in here that I really, really want to read, but I don't think that I can.
But it becomes a distraction if you do too much of that.
Yeah.
Right? But I think if you're spending too much time figuring out how do we get Levis to a point where we can dump him.
But I think it's not necessarily that you're trying. That's what you're trying to do. I think in essence, what you're doing is, okay, we want to let both of these guys sort of get the same amount of time. We're not even worried about the other guys. We want these two guys to start off to get the most time. And then in our mind, Cam Ward will eventually prove himself very quickly that he is the guy. But in the meantime, we're still going to, allow Will Levis to develop in this system, because like the lad Malik Willis, we may be able to trade him more than likely as camp is going on. Nobody thought that that the Titans would be able to get anything for Malik Willis, anything. And I remember us talking about that, a week or so prior to him getting traded. What is he worth on an open market? What's going to happen? And I don't think anybody thought they would get anything really. And it turns out because of the way he was developing in camp, they were able to get something for him. I think that's the approach this time with Will Levis. Let's get something from it. And I think you can. I think you can get a 5th-round pick for Will Levis, honestly.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on what I've called the Titans pump and dump scheme. I'm sorry that we're children and snickering at something that Willie said. 615-737-1025.
You got to get a lot of pump to get the dump.
Pause.
Just trying to boil it down to the low gravy.
All right. Coming up next.
Oh my goodness! Where did the low gravy come in? You bumping and jumping and then you want
I can't even get this teaser out.
Here?
I can't even get it out. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingham, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
how you think Cam has handled maybe his first couple of weeks, maybe working with the veterans, and how Will maybe handled more competition in the room?
They both handled it really well. I've been pleased with their demeanor and their approach. Will's done a really nice job of getting better at things he needed to get better at. I felt really pretty good about his offseason work and how he's come back. Bless you. Cam has done a really nice job of integrating himself, and a lot of that is just knowing the play call, being able to spit it out in the huddle, having the tempo, getting familiar with the receivers and what the words mean, and how to call it, and how your snap count sounds. All that stuff has been really well done on his part. So they've both done a really nice job getting up to speed where they needed to. Both had different things that they're trying to get accomplished, but I'm happy with where that's at.
How do you split their work right now?
Right now, it's all evenly split. We're not competing right now. It'll change probably a little bit when we get to the actual OTAs and we got 7-on-7 and some teamwork and stuff like that. But right now, there's, we're really not going against anybody. So we just roll through it. They're probably roughly about even all the way through, which is pretty standard for this time of year.
That was Brian Callahan the other day talking about Cam Ward and Will Levis. By the way, I do want to give a shout out to Joel on our text line talking about the pumping and dumping.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I've heard from some Italian guys from New Jersey that Wabistix is a hot stock. So excellent Sopranos reference there, Joel, because that's what I was sort of referring to, because Christopher Moltisanti had some underlings who were helping him with a pump and dump scheme.
There you go.
So shout out to Joel, big Sopranos fan as well. So I did some research because I know that there are some Titans fans who hope that Cam Ward doesn't start right away. We've seen examples in the past of first-round quarterbacks who sit on the bench to start, and it's helped their careers. I do think that those days are, if they're not completely behind us, I think we're certainly getting there. By my count, 10 of the past 12 quarterbacks selected first in the draft have started their team season opener. Again, 10 of the past 12. The only two who didn't were Baker Mayfield in 2018 and Jared Goff in 2016. But then I decided to look at other first-round quarterbacks. I did not want to isolate it to only number one overall picks. So last year, there were 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Caleb Williams started week 1, Jaden Daniels started week 1, and Bo Nix started week 1. Drake May did not. He started on the bench. Michael Penix did not. He started on the bench, and J.J. McCarthy was injured. So let's call it 3 out of 5 because J.J. McCarthy was unavailable. The year before that, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and Anthony Richardson all started week 1 for their respective teams. Kenny Pickett did not start for the Steelers in his rookie season. Mitch Trubisky started. In Trevor Lawrence's draft year, Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones started week 1 as rookies. Trey Lance and Justin Fields did not. So I feel like it's a mixed bag. Andy Dalton started for the Chicago Bears before Justin Fields entered the lineup. Would we say that it benefited Justin Fields in the long run that he didn't start immediately?
No.
So to go back even further, Joe Burrow started week 1. Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jordan Love did not start.
I think I think every situation is different. I think with quarterbacks, you can't say, well, these 4 guys didn't start, so these next 4 guys didn't start.
Right, but I know that a lot of Titans fans are using what happened because Mike Borgonzi is here now, and Mike Borgonzi was in Kansas City when they had Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes. So that I think there are Titans fans hoping to make those parallels.
They didn't have to rush Patrick Mahomes. See, that's what people fail to understand. They didn't have to rush Patrick Mahomes. Smith was a former first-round pick. It didn't work out in San Francisco.
The first overall pick.
Yes,
right?
It was the first overall pick in San Francisco. It wasn't, and some of it had to do with injury. And then he gets to Kansas City, and automatically, he started to become a better quarterback. Why? Because he was healthy, and he's with Andy Reid as well. So they didn't need him to come in and start. Okay, they didn't need Patrick Mahomes to come in and start. They knew eventually, because I remember that day when Patrick Mahomes got drafted, and it was you, Darren, and I, Willie, I think. And I said, I guarantee you, and we can go back. I said, I guarantee you, Alex Smith has the best season he's ever had. Why? Because he knows that this is his last year in Kansas City. And he needs to play well to parlay himself into a bigger contract. He played exceptionally well, got a huge contract with the Washington Commanders. Unfortunately for him, he ended up having a catastrophic knee injury that almost ended. Well, basically it did end his career. He ended up coming back, but he never was the same. But he almost had to have his leg amputated because of the injury. So when Alex Smith was in Kansas City, they didn't need him in the start. I don't care how good Patrick Mahomes showed them throughout the season in practice. They didn't need him to start. So he didn't start. So he comes in the next year and he starts to, sort of, start up this legacy that he's building now. Each situation is different, okay? As much as people want Cam Ward to possibly sit, if he proves to you that he's capable of running your team and he shows all those things that you need to see, you start him, okay? You don't have time to sit back and wait. If he's struggling, okay, we may need to change the plan a little bit. But I am not going to not start him under any circumstance. If this guy is proven in camp that he's the best quarterback in camp, I am starting him. If it's close, I am starting him.
Okay.
I am not sitting him down because to me, there hasn't been enough proof within the last 10 years that if you sit a quarterback, it's better for him, because he just rattled off about 5 or 6 quarterbacks that set, and it still didn't improve their career.
Okay, so I think it's the right approach to not make up your mind today.
Exactly.
I think some teams make up their mind and say, number 1 overall pick, he's in there day 1, snap 1. I think that's probably not good because it doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go. It would be ideal.
Yeah.
But if he's not ready, he's not ready. So I think that's sound thinking. So let's take the pump and dump. If he's not ready, then is he getting the starters reps up until you make that decision? Either way, I think that's probably right, because long term, he's eventually going to start. We know that.
Yes.
So I think you should give him the starters reps. But then if he's not ready, who is the backup? Could Levis be the backup?
No, he can't.
If it means that on day 1, if Ward's ready and you stick to the plan, Will Levis could be your opening day starting quarterback?
He can't be, Willie. Unfortunately.
Okay, so
I'm not saying the other guys can't be.
Okay, so then why even have him on the roster? I think you're better off having the Brandon Allen.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Just be the guy that, look, he can take the backup reps, and look, if he's got to start, we know it's not going to be great, but that's the best thing long term. So that's where I'm going. I think we all agree that Will Levis isn't the ideal guy. If you really have an open mind that Cam Ward, if he's not ready, he's not ready. So, let's have the other guy waiting in the wings. If it's Will Levis, that will be a really interesting plot twist.
You can't, I don't think, because how ineffective Will Levis was last year. And again, I'm not saying that, this season will be a repeat of what he did last year. He can come back, and I've said this before, he can come back and do a total 180 and be a totally different quarterback. Even if that happens, you cannot keep him on the roster. That's just in today's football. Brandon Allen, you could start him over starting Cam Ward, because what will happen is that if Will Levis starts playing really well, now you're gonna have to make a decision on Cam Ward, what to do with him or what to do with Will Levis. It just depends. You don't want to start that problem right off the bat. If Will Levis is playing well throughout preseason or throughout camp, that's when you start ramping up the making the phone calls to try to get a trade going. Because if you wait any longer, then you're going to open yourself up to potential problems after you get in the season. Again, what if Cam Ward, what if Will Levis comes out and he's playing well, and then you say, well, I'm gonna start Will Levis. Will Levis comes out, throws 3 touchdowns. Oh, okay, I'm gonna play Will Levis again. He throws another 2 or 3, and you're winning. This young kid, Cam Ward, he's developing the way you want him to develop. What are you gonna do?
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on this. But coming up next, Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL insider, will join us. We'll discuss the Stanley Cup playoffs and more with Elliot. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace Fingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, Sportsnet NHL Insider, Elliot Freeman, presented by Old National Bank. Get old. Elliot, don't think we didn't hear you wonder aloud on your podcast about whether Jonathan Marchessault and the Toronto Maple Leafs could be a match this offseason. And I know you were spitballing, but you spitballing is different than me spitballing. So how realistic do you think that actually is?
Yeah, Adam, honestly, that was a pure spitball. I make it very clear.
You did, yes.
Yes. You start to sit and you start to think about things that may match. And I wanted to make it very clear that ultimately it's the player's choice, because Marchessault has the power. And I've not asked him, and I've got no idea if he would even want to do that. He may not have any desire at all to do that. But you're sitting there and you're looking at fits, and, I don't need to tell you, it was a tough season, Nashville. Pieces didn't all fit. There were some hard feelings. The Predators would like to make some changes. I'm a big Marchessault fan, last year notwithstanding. I think he's the kind of player that can really help a good team. I was just playing like I was like your grandmother, Adam. I was playing matchmaker.
Fair enough. My grandmother did not set me up with my wife, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I use this thing called the phone, which is how people meet. These days. We are all awaiting the fallout, as I know you are, of the Toronto Maple Leafs elimination from the Stanley Cup playoffs in a tough Game 7 loss to the Florida Panthers. You reported yesterday that Brendan Shanahan has been granted permission by the Maple Leafs, despite the fact that his contract is expiring in only a month or so. He's been granted permission to talk to the New York Islanders about an opening in their front office. What sort of ripple effect will Shanahan's seemingly inevitable departure have inside the Maple Leafs organization?
I think that's to be determined, Adam. The Maple Leafs, the Maple Leafs are owned, at least for now, by three parties. There's two telecom companies. There's Rogers, who I work for, owns 37.5. Bell, who is the other telecom, owns 37.5. And a gentleman by the name of Larry Tannenbaum owns the other 25. Now, Rogers is in the process of buying out Bell. It may be done, if not today, soon. So they'll own 75%, and they're going to have control. But the board is meeting today, and they hired a new president and CEO, guy by the name of Keith Pelly, who used to be a TV executive, and he took over a year ago. But he kind of sat back and waited and didn't make any immediate change. He wanted to feel his way around. There were some contracts that still had to expire, but it's believed that today he's going to make his plan to the board. And, that could lead to changes both on the Maple Leafs side and the Raptors side. So we're waiting to hear the news. The fact that they gave the Islanders permission to talk to Shanahan, as you said, Adam, leads to indicate that his footing is not exactly solid. But we don't know if it's going to go down any deeper than that. One of the things I do believe, though, is that the Maple Leafs have a very big staff. For example, they have five assistant general managers. So one of the things we've talked about and heard is that they're going to streamline their operation. So I think while we've heard a lot of these rumors, we're still waiting to see what that's going to mean. Sometime after this meeting, we should have a better idea.
The Edmonton Oilers suffered a tough loss last night, 6-3 to the Dallas Stars. The Dallas power play was en fuego at the start of the third period as they rallied from an early deficit. There is a player on the Edmonton Oilers whose upcoming contract negotiations I am absolutely fascinated by, and that's Evan Bouchard. Evan Bouchard has been fabulous in his postseason career. The stat is out there that only Bobby Orr has averaged more points per game in the playoffs among defensemen in NHL history, if I recall that correctly. And even without Matthias Ekholm by his side throughout the postseason, Bouchard continues to be excellent on the back end for the Oilers. What do you think that negotiation is going to look like? What kind of contract could Bouchard end up with this summer?
It's going to be a big one because the numbers dictate it. Bouchard is arbitration eligible if he doesn't sign an extension, Adam. And arbitration is all about the numbers, the figures. That says it's going to be a big number because he puts up points. I'll say this. Bouchard is a really talented guy. It just seems like every mistake he makes ends up all over the highlights because they turn into like a big play against. And, that's the thing about him is that he's polarizing. He's really talented. He can play with good players, which is not a small thing. But, the mistakes he makes tend to be glaring. And I think, I think it's actually going to be one of the more interesting cases is what is his next contract going to be, because the numbers dictate it's going to be massive. And we're all wondering, how do the Oilers feel about that? Connor McDavid, he's eligible to sign an extension on July 1st. He's got one more year left on his current contract, and he is worth $1 bazillion. I think we're all curious to see what is that number going to be. And sooner or later, you can't sign everyone. And I think people wonder exactly what that's going to mean for Bouchard.
Elliot Friedman is with us. So, yeah, I know we're going to, let's not put the cart ahead of the horse. But how much groundwork do you think the Oilers have made knowing that this has been coming for a long time with McDavid? Now that they have the certainty, they've watched what the Avalanche chose not to do and move on from Rantanen, I guess for the reason of they didn't want too many guys. And I saw a stat the other day, Elliot, that really shocked me, that no team has ever had a player making more than $10 million win the Cup. Bobrovsky makes exactly 10. And I didn't cross-check that to verify that that's true, but I think I know.
True.
Okay, and so with Oilers knowing all this, do you think they're making progress? What do you think they have in mind for McDavid?
Whatever he wants.
Yeah, and as they should, right? But at the same time, they're seeing that stat, and they know how close they've come.
Here's the thing about that stat, though. Like, that stat is true, but now $10 million is much less a percentage of the cap as it used to be, right?
Totally.
So, while the number's true, I think it's a little bit different. And don't forget, last year, McDavid came within one win of the Cup, right? So, he's right there. Like, they're right there. I think this. I'll tell you a story. So, last time Connor McDavid had his contract come up, which was 7 years ago, him and his agents walked in there and they said, look, like, the maximum you can make in the NHL is 20% of the cap. So right now the cap is 87.5. So the most you can make is 87.5 times 2, which is $17.5 million. Back then it was a smaller number, but they went in there and they said, look, we're not going to ask for 20%. And the Oilers were like, thank God, because we would have given it to you. And initially the agreement was 8 years at $13.33 million. And that kind of got out, and McDavid was like, nah. He just said, you know what, it's too much. I could give more to the other players in the cap, make a better team, so settle at 12.5. Now, I think there's going to be, I don't even know if it's pressure, but I think there's going to be an understanding that McDavid has to move the line. The number one guy right now is his teammate Draisaitl, 14, but I don't think he's going to take the max number. The interesting thing about a guy like Bouchard is, so the president of the Oilers, Jeff Jackson, he left being an agent to take over the presidency of the Oilers. His firm represented Bouchard. So that adds another layer to all of this. I think they recognize that Bouchard is young. He's a scorer. He's an important player to that team. But I think there's a limit. And I'm really curious to see where they're going to decide that limit is.
Every year, one of the compelling things about watching the Oilers is to see if they can win it with the superstars making what they make and with a, as the kids would call it, a mid goalie, right? And because we argue about it here all the time about how much you should pay a really good goalie. You've been in on the conversations with Saros, and everybody's stressed that Saros had a down year, and now he's going to be paid more, even though in the big picture, as you just got talking about, the cap's up, so the percentage he's going to make isn't really that high. But that aside, how much did a loss like that just sting, where they sort of had control of the game? I don't know how much you would put on Skinner in that game, but it's always like they're trying to carry the goalies around or really hope that the goalies overachieve.
Yeah, that one would sting. Like if I lost, if they lose that series, they're going to remember Game 1 all summer. There's no question about that. When you're up 3-1 in the third period, especially the way they've played, you would think they would have knocked that one down. There's a couple of other concerns. Dallas was getting no scoring from anyone other than their first line. You know, their first line is Hintz, your buddy Granlund, and Rantanen. And aside, when those guys were off the ice, they were getting caved in. And now Duchesne scores, breaks his slump. Sagan scores twice, breaks his slump. All of a sudden, these guys are feeling really good about themselves again, right? So you don't like that. That's not good. Secondly, you know, the thing about Skinner is he's really hit or really miss. Like, he just is. Like, you just, like, either he shuts you out as he did to Vegas twice in a row, or Bizarro World happens. And it's not really a great way to live if you're a team. It's too erratic. But I think now you kind of understand that as long as he's your goalie, you're going to have to live with some of that. And you're right. Last night it wasn't all on him. Last year in their series, the Western Conference Final, I think Edmonton was either perfect on the penalty kill or they only gave up one. They gave up 3 in Game 1. It's just a bad sign for all of that. And I still think Edmonton, they've got a good mentality. They'll roll their eyes and they'll put it behind them as long as they're playing. But if they lose that series, they'll regret that one all summer.
And now to the Saros part, I'm curious, and I know you're not watching the World Championships very closely. And to be honest, I'm not watching all of the games myself, but I have noticed that so far, UC Saros has played tremendously for Team Finland, and I'm looking for positive signs that he could sort of rebuild after a really tough year mentally, I'm sure, for him. What have you seen over the years of what a good World Championship performance can do for a player's mentality and confidence?
Well, I would look at Anaheim's young goalie, Dostal. So last year, the media tour in Europe was in Prague, and it was just after the Czechs had won. And Matt Dostal, who's the goalie in Anaheim, he was their starter. And all the NHL guys were raving about him, like just raving about him. Even the other goalies, guys like Peter Mrazek and Vejmelka from Utah, who didn't get to play because he was playing so well, they were raving about him. And he took another step this year. He had a pretty good year. And one of the reasons Anaheim believes that it can win eventually is because of what this kid did at the World Championships. So I do believe in it. I know there's a lot of teams out there that really want their guys to go play in that tournament if they've had a rough year, because there's something about playing for your country that snaps you back to attention, that gets you focused, that makes you feel something important. And, we'll see how the medal round goes, but he beat Canada. That's never bad. Everybody else wants to beat Canada. So, it's not a bad thing for Saros at all, as long as it ends positively.
Yeah, and you made the important point. The medal round hasn't happened yet. We'll see if it can continue. But the win over Canada definitely got some people's attention over here. So, Elliot, let's hit on the East. The Panthers, they seem to be really grooved in this, hitting on all of the notes that they are kind of the bullies that initiate, know not to retaliate, and really fluster the opposition. And, of course, they've got enough skill and talent to be better as well. They look like they are the complete package right now.
Oh, they are. They are. And, you know, the Maple Leafs pushed them to the limit, but when it really mattered, they manhandled them. And, you know, Carolina looked as good as anybody in the playoffs. And in game one, they manhandled them. You know, I thought Marchand said it best in game 7. Like, we know what to do. He wasn't there last year when they won, but he's an experienced player, and he joins a team. They all understand what their roles are. Paul Maurice makes all of them feel important. Everybody here is important. And whether you play 25 minutes a night or you play 9 minutes a night, your role is important. And everybody understands the way they've got to play. Toronto, like I said, Toronto pushed them right to the limit, but they never panicked. Toronto probably should have won that series, but they didn't because these guys know how to play. So I just look at it that way. They don't beat themselves. They really don't beat themselves. So you got to find a way to beat them.
I wonder in 20 years, this is a question for another show and maybe more of a question for Toronto, if they can be rational about it, which I'm sure it's hard to do right now. But,
which we can.
Right.
Yes.
But the Panthers someday might be considered a great, great team that we look back on, especially if they win it again this year. Tampa, we know, was one of the greatest teams of the last, definitely of the salary cap era, but you could argue of the last 30 or 40 years. And that's who Toronto has had to get through in the first couple of rounds. And so putting that in perspective makes you maybe think differently, at least from afar, and not this failure of a franchise. At least it makes it understandable a little bit more, but that's if you're more rational and the 40,000-foot view, probably.
I think about that all the time, Willie. I really do. I always think about that. Like, you know, for example, Colorado lost round 1. Does that mean Colorado's a failure? They would probably say yes because they lost in the first round. But I always look at, because of the different playoff setup we have, I always look at who do you lose to as opposed to when you lose. Now, Toronto's disappointed because they haven't had a second-round win in 23 years, and they should have won. Like, they probably should have beaten those guys. But I do look at it like it's Florida, and you have to understand that it is Florida. But that doesn't erase the disappointment. And also, part of the issue, Willie, is that its contracts are up, right?
Sure.
So sometimes you get to make the decisions. It's like life. And sometimes the decisions get made for you. And this might be a case in Toronto where the decisions are made for you.
Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet NHL insider, joining us on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, presented by Old National Bank. Get old. Elliot, great stuff as always. We'll chat next week.
All right, guys. Take care.
Elliot Freeman joining us on the program. 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on the Stanley Cup playoffs. But coming up next, we reveal our nominee for World's Biggest Dirtbag. We'll do that coming up next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, Willie Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mace Finken, Adonic 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingen, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So, as I said, we're going to unveil our nominee for world's biggest dirtbag. And I'm saying that, of course, tongue in cheek. But Brett Favre, not painted in a positive light in the latest edition of Untold, the Netflix sports documentary series called The Fall of Favre. It was an interesting watch. And these Untold documentaries, these mini docs, they're hit or miss for me. I watched the one recently about Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton and their time on the Washington Wizards. And I like that one because I was living in Washington at that time. So I remember that story happening in real time. Yes.
It's breaking news. It's about the national championship break. They've reseeded, said the executive unanimously adopted a move to straight seeding from this year's playoffs. And it called today. Teams will be seeded directly. Excuse me for
that's okay.
Teams will be directly seeded directly from 1 to 12, eliminating the concept that designed the top 4 seeds for conference champs.
So this is from Ross Dellinger reporting that CFP executives unanimously adopted a move to straight seeding for this year's college football playoff. As Derek said, teams will be seated directly on the rankings 1 through 12, eliminating the concept that designated the top 4 seeds for conference champions. And we can discuss that a little bit more at length tomorrow. But this Untold about Brett Favre, they started sort of with Brett Favre's origin story at Southern Miss. A lot of it was focused on Jen Sturger, the ex-New York Jets employee who was the recipient of some unwanted text messages.
Unsolicited
text messages from Brett Favre. And I believe this is the first time that she has spoken at length about how this has impacted her life. The final section of the mini doc was about the Mississippi welfare scandal that Brett Favre has been embroiled in over the past few years. And, I think they even mentioned at the end, it may have been Jen Sturger at the end of the documentary says, people are going to watch this and it's not going to change their mind about Brett Favre. But it does feel at the moment that Brett Favre has gotten off scot-free on a lot of these things that he's done.
I think from a actual paying a price of paying back the money, it doesn't look like the money has been paid back. And I do think he definitely got off scot-free about the whatever
Jen
form
Sturger
of harassment do you want to talk about. The picture, the text, the effect it had. He was not punished for that at all. I do think that as we look at Brett Favre right now, and we sort of watch how much he's in the public eye right now, I think he's sort of in the penalty box where you're not seeing him endorse products. You're not seeing him being asked to give his perspective on a national show. Am I wrong? I think he's sort of been put out into the limbo, kind of like Brett Favre. Let's not really go there. I think he has paid a price from that standpoint. But I think what I wanted to know from the documentary that I didn't know, I didn't learn a whole lot. It was very interesting to hear the woman's perspective. I thought she was really good because she did admit that, hey, look, I played the game to advance quickly in the business. I didn't shy away from it. And so she balanced all of that with what happened to her.
She famously wore a bikini to a Florida State football game because she went to Florida State. Now, she actually explained in the documentary that she had a bartending shift before she went to the game.
Right.
And someone spilled something on her shirt. So she just took off her shirt and went to the game because it was going to be hot in September.
And she wore the bathing suit
in Tallahassee. Yeah. And then Brent Musburger had the infamous line, 1,500 red-blooded Americans are teenagers, whatever it is, are applying to Florida State right now.
It's a good line by Brent.
Yes.
Brent Russ, we were not shy to
Yes.
go down that road during a broadcast. We remember AJ McCarron's
Yes,
girlfriend,
remember it
or
all.
whatever, or wife, or I guess
It was his girlfriend
at
at the time. Yeah.
But so that was it. That was, I think, compelling to hear that whole perspective from her, because I think she was pretty level-headed about it. She didn't go out of her way to blast. She just kind of presented what was going on. But what I thought fell short was I don't understand why there isn't more of an effort going on in Mississippi right now to recoup the money, which clearly has already been spent, but find a way to pay back the state.
And
basically.
most of it was spent on a volleyball gym, right?
Yes.
At the University of
They called
Southern
it a
Mississippi.
stadium. I've never heard a volleyball arena called a stadium, but everybody referred to it as a volleyball
Favre's
stadium.
daughter was a volleyball player. at
Right.
Southern
That's the
Miss,
center of it, right? He got money directly for himself, about $1 million for his foundation.
That should have been used for disadvantaged citizens.
Right.
Of
All of the
Mississippi.
money came from the welfare fund. 5-something million for the volleyball facility, some for him and his foundation, and some for this company that was developing a product that supposedly helped for concussions that flopped, was not approved. And, just like a lot of upstart companies needed money to stay alive. And so he got a couple million for that. And eventually it didn't work. The product was not,
It's a dud.
It's a dud. It just didn't work. It was probably snake oil when you come down to it, right?
Yeah. Just talk fast.
Yeah.
and
This
sell a
helps you,
product.
a magic pill that cures you from
I'm Brett
concussions.
Favre.
It didn't happen. But nobody's gotten the money back, right? There's other people that have been charged,
yeah.
everything like that, but he hasn't paid a price there.
Nobody's went to jail. Nobody completely. Unless something has changed since they've done the documentary, nobody has been penalized. There are some people that have been charged, but nobody's in jail for this. Damn sure Brett Favre's not in jail. He's a scumbag, plain and simple. And I'm not even talking about the Jen Sturger stuff. That's over there. That's not what I'm talking about, people. He's a scumbag. Anytime you're taking money from underprivileged people, and you're taking it to do something that you should do with your own money, build a facility because your daughter's at a university or whatever it was.
He's got that Wrangler jeans money.
Yeah.
He could
To
have done
build
it.
a volleyball stadium. You're a scumbag, plain and simple.
He knew it was wrong.
Anybody that's taking money from someone that is underprivileged, underserved, and you're taking the money from them, and you're doing something nefarious, you are a damn scumbag. Brett Favre, you're a scumbag. Plain and simple.
There were those text messages that were involved in the legal filings, right? Where Brett Favre said something to the extent of, they're not going to know where the money came from, right? You're not going to tell them where the money came from.
We can do this with the
right?
media not figuring it out, right?
Right.
And when you say that,
you're
doing something
This is all
wrong.
alleged, of course. This
Exactly,
is all alleged,
allegedly.
of
But the
course.
texts are there.
Exactly.
Yes,
the text is
are there. The texts are there. But one interesting choice that the documentarians made was including Michael Vick. So the first person you see in the sort of testimonials that they're doing is Michael Vick. And my first thought was, why is Michael Vick on this? What relationship does he have to Brett Favre? And it was his way and the documentarian's way, I think, of pointing out the hypocrisy in the way that Michael Vick was treated by the NFL and by society when he had the dogfighting ring early in his career versus what's been going on with Brett Favre.
And listen, I know there are a bunch of dog lovers out there. I'm a dog lover. And cruelty to animals isn't the way to go. And you should have to pay a penalty.
And I was living
yeah.
I was living in the area at the time because it was happening, I think, in Newport News,
Yeah,
which
so-
is not far from where I grew up, and it was a huge story.
And he paid for it. He had to atone for his sins.
What,
and
two
it happened.
years in prison, I think?
And nobody ever let him forget about it. But Brett Favre allegedly steals money from people that need the money more than you, that needs the money more than your daughter needs that a volleyball court or volleyball stadium. Allegedly, you stole money from them. We have recordings. You have text messages. You stole the money from them, allegedly. So there's the hypocrisy. Nothing is done to you, but everything is done to him. And he deserved it. Michael Vick, whatever happened to him, he understands he deserved it. There's remorse there. Even when Michael Vick was remorse, people still didn't want to accept that. But talked about Brent Favre, people don't care. Him stealing from poor people, you don't care about that. Seriously. I don't understand. I really don't understand this. I really don't. I understand why they put Michael Vick on there now, because they wanted to show the hypocrisy of one guy who did something wrong and he had to pay for it, plain and simple. And everybody, made him out to be just this horrible person. Okay, I get it. But the other guy does something and everybody seems to forget about it, don't want to talk about it, excuse it. It's just like the hypocrisy, even the NFL with the Jen Sturger stuff. He didn't get suspended for that. The NFL basically watched.
Right?
He got fined, but the NFL washed their hands of it. I don't know if he got fined. Maybe he did. But he did not get suspended. That I do know.
It was swept under the rug.
Yeah, it was swept. I mean, you didn't hear about it after a while.
He was fined $50,000 for failing to cooperate with the investigation.
For failing to cooperate.
$50,000. He wouldn't admit what happened. I thought the Vic part of it was an interesting way that they sort of just had it as a periphery question, but they didn't have Michael Vick. I think Michael Vick probably didn't want to sidetrack the whole documentary on Brett Favre about that question of, but here's the guy sitting there going, I paid the maximum penalty for something that I did wrong.
And he deserved to.
I could argue that what Brett Favre did was even lower and more of a low, more of a serious violation, right, of mankind, right? A worse thing to do. $8.5 million basically stolen from people that needed it really, really bad. What's worse, the dog fighting? And that question is never really asked, but it's sort of out there, right? It's presented, but it's not really answered. It's left for the viewer to answer. But I think Michael Vick, without saying it in the documentary, is like, I paid a penalty, a big penalty. Brett Favre has never really paid a big penalty. In fact, Brett Favre is still playing the card of, I didn't know where the money went, and I've been smeared, and look at the media, and it just doesn't fly. It doesn't fly.
I don't understand when you.
But why doesn't he pay a price? If I'm Michael Vick, I would be wondering that myself.
They got you in the recording. They have all this stuff.
It's in the court documents.
It's everything's in a. Why hasn't he been held accountable for the things that he's done? Somebody really explain that to me.
615-737-1025. Jared Stillman coming up next. I'm sure he'll be thrilled about our apology, which never came. We'll talk to Jared next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Okay, time to tell you about Loan Pronto. Call Loan Pronto right now for a free instant home appraisal. Why? Because if you're looking for cash to fund, say, a home improvement project, or you're looking to pay some bills, your home's equity can be a great engine for you, and you could get a better interest rate that will put you on better financial ground. You can even keep your low-rate first mortgage if that's the category you fall into. No appraisals, no waiting, no BS. It's just something to really take a look at if you're a homeowner, because the average homeowner has thousands and thousands of dollars in home equity that's available to you should you need it. So call Loan Pronto. Again, free instant home appraisal. See how much cash you can get out today and address that home improvement project you're looking for. Loan Pronto is A+ rated by the BBB, have nearly 2,500 five-star Google reviews. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Get fast debt relief now. Loanpronto.com. NMLS.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D. Mace Finken, the Donick 1025, 1063 the game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vinken here with you. Stillman and Company coming up next. So we bring in our friend, Jared Stillman. And Jared, I just want to repeat what I said earlier. To quote Larry David, no apology is forthcoming.
Yeah, I didn't expect that. I demanded an apology knowing it wasn't going to happen. It's kind of like when these politicians nowadays say, like, I demand that so-and-so resign. You know, like it's not going to happen, but they get to say it and it makes them feel good. And it made me feel good yesterday to say that because I know you guys are smart I know where you all went to college. I know, Adam, you're a capital J journalist from a capital J journalism school. Willie, you went to Vanderbilt. Derek, you played with Jim Miller. I mean, at some point, like,
Hey, man, represent my school well. Say Michigan State, man. Don't leave my school out.
You played for Nick Saban.
Don't pull my.
I mean, I just, you guys think that it was really a helmet to the quad in the Colts game, and that's why he's still hurt today.
Hey, Will, I mean, Jerry, my thing with you was it could have just as well been a helmet or whatever to the thigh. But with that and the knee that you already got to manage, it is going to affect your knee. He could have been completely honest with saying it was a quad injury. Now, the way they handled it when it happened when Snead finally said, hey, I had surgery, is probably not the best way you handle a situation. But I'm not going to sit here and say, well, no, he hurt his knee and it really wasn't a thigh. If he told me it was the thigh, I believe it was the thigh. But I do believe also that because of the thigh, it is bothering the knee.
If he told you that he wasn't involved in a shooting at the car dealership, would you believe that?
But Jared, you're honestly saying that there was never. Your theory is that there was no helmet to the thigh ever.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did. You've been saying that.
The idea
You've been saying that
was that he was out for the rest of the season because of the helmet to the thigh. I don't believe.
Okay, but you
He's
saw
still
Ryan
because of the helmet to the thigh.
Yes, that could happen. It could happen. Ryan Johansson, you saw that injury to the thigh, right? That had him in the hospital and missed the next several months in a
Didn't he finish the game?
Yes, he did finish the game.
Okay.
But wasn't he ready for the start of the next season?
He was, but that was a serious injury there.
So that was June, July, August, September, and he was ready. I mean, this has been October,
that would have been
December,
May,
January, February, March, April, May.
Right, because it was complicated. Like as Derek said,
if L'Jarius Sneed had been impregnated when the helmet hit the quad, which I think is equally as likely as this being the injury, he'd almost be having the baby today.
So when you already have a bum knee, which Johansson didn't, but when you already have a bum knee and then you get hit in the quad, whatever it was with the quad, it was severe enough that it caused him to miss multiple games and then ultimately the whole season. When you're already dealing with a bad knee and you have that quad on the same knee, don't you think it's going to take a little bit longer for all of it to come back? Don't you think
have surgery on your knee? Yeah, I do think that.
Well, what if you have surgery on your quad? A procedure on your quad? Don't you think it still would be with a already bum knee? Don't you think it still would be, harder, or it's going to take a little bit longer to get back? Because one, the knee was never really, they had to manage the knee already. So don't you think having surgery on my quad or having a procedure on my quad would lengthen the rehab process because the knee is already damaged somewhat?
Jared, this is the point. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. And neither are you, but you're making assumptions. I'm just saying that a helmet to the thigh can be no two injuries are the same. I don't even know if it was compartment syndrome involved or anything close to it with Snead, but a helmet to the thigh can be a very serious injury. That's my point.
I just think that, sure, a helmet to the thigh, he could accidentally hit an artery and cause, I guess. I mean, anything's possible. We saw DeMar Hamlin die on the football field. But I just don't think that whatever happened to Snead's quad, I just don't think it's that serious. I think the Titans.
Right, and you have zero evidence to base it on. Zero.
I told you guys he was walking around with a brace in the locker room.
Right, and that's very circumstantial, and there is
a lot of circumstantial evidence here.
So my witness,
expert okay, but you're also making an assumption that he really isn't in a hurry to start playing football anytime soon.
I don't think L'Jarius Snead will ever take another snap for the Titans.
Oh, okay. I mean,
and
do you think that's because of his injury or because of his legal situation?
Exactly.
I think that the Titans would overlook the legal situation if the injury thing wasn't always going to be a problem.
So you think he won't play because of the legal situation, or is it the injury?
I believe that the Titans know that they should not have made that deal, that he's damaged goods. What everybody else was saying, and they said, oh, it'll be fine. They know that they were wrong and everybody else was right. And if the commissioner suspends him, they'll release him. And
So
keep
what
all
if the
guaranteed
commissioner
money.
doesn't suspend him?
Then I think they'll try, but I think he'll be hurt next season. He'll still be recovering from that.
They'll
helmet to the
try
quad that
what?
Willie is convinced to do.
What would they try? You said they'll try. What would they try? To trade him?
You're saying they're going to cut him?
Oh, cut him? They're not
He'll
going
be
to
on
cut
the
him.
team next year if they can't get out of the money, but I don't think he'll play. I think he'll still be hurt.
You think he will not play a single game if he's on the roster?
Correct.
Okay. Well,
so
we
he'll
just
be on
gotta wait.
injured. You're saying he'll be on injured reserve then, and they'll just
Yes.
pay the money, but secretly he could play. You're just saying they don't want him to play?
No, I just don't think he can play. I
You don't think
his
he's
knees are
healthy?
bad.
Oh, okay. I mean,
This
he
is why
might-
I didn't say that they shouldn't have traded for him because he wasn't a good player, because in Kansas City, he was a very good player.
Uh-huh.
I'm saying they shouldn't have traded for him because clearly the knees were an issue. And that, in my opinion, has come to fruition. I believe Snead was looking for the payday, got the payday, and now that he's got the payday, Andy Levitre, I think you guys remember when he was on the Titans.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I knew somebody who was close with Andy Levitre when I was on the radio in Louisville. And this person told me that, Andy Levitre's knees are so bad that basically he said, I'm just gutting it for one contract. And once I get the contract, like my life, I can go forward. And you were the team that gave him the contract. Now, I don't think that was his public knowledge about how bad his knees or whatever were. But I think that does happen where players are like, especially pitchers in baseball, where they're like, I'm holding it together right now because I'm trying to get that contract. And then I get that contract, and it's much easier to say, okay, let's go ahead and have the shoulder surgery now.
But Andy Levitre played for 3 more years with the Falcons after he left the Titans.
Right, but he was still, A, terrible, but B, his goal was to get that contract. That was his goal. His desire was, I have to get that contract. And I think that's what L'Jarius Sneed was trying to do is, hey, I've got this knee and I can tape it together and bubble gum it and I can do all that.
Right.
I
All
want
theories,
the contract.
all theories by you with really nothing to back it up.
The real question here is whether or not you believe the Titans. And I don't
No,
believe
the question,
Titans,
you-
and it sounds like you believe the Titans.
Your only point that makes any sense is that it was a questionable move and a risky move to trade for him, knowing that there were issues with the knee. That I agree with you on.
Mm-hmm.
But all this other stuff that is complete speculation and conspiracy stuff.
And speaking of which, it's time for the complete speculation and conspiracy program from 2 to 6 p.m.
I have one very
Okay,
important
go
question
ahead.
to ask
Go
you.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you believe O.J. Simpson was guilty?
Hell yeah, I believe he was
Okay,
guilty.
at least there's that.
Okay.
Yes.
And with
I
that,
don't sit here and lie.
And with that, Stillman & Company coming up next.
Be loving your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful Thursday. Peace.